Welcome back to our third day of the EMANES annual conference. Pleasure to introduce my dear friend Cinzia Alcidi. Cinzia, she is Senior Research Fellow and Head of Economic Policy and Jobs and Skills Units for the Center for European Policy Studies in Brussels. And Cinzia has been the co-founder of the EMNES, which later on became EMANES. CEPS has been a founding member of the network. And also we have been working for now, this is our 10th year, Cinzia, of the annual conference. As you can remember, our first session was in Tunis in 2016. December. Shahir is even reminding me of it. So 10 years have already passed, which is for good. And I think for good, we had a great journey together. And also, beyond this, we have worked, Cinzia and I, in CEPS since many years. Maybe we met in 2008. So we were colleagues and we together now since then, trying really to bridge Europe, the Mediterranean, and Africa. So I'm very, very happy to have you here, Cinzia. Cinzia, she has huge expertise on macroeconomic policy, monetary policy, international finance, international economics and finance, also on labor market and skills. So she has wide experience in all those topics. And today she will talk to us about a very important theme, which is economic security and power challenges for global power politics, challenges for global cooperation. I think these are key topics which will in fact help us to understand what are the new dynamics that we are living in, and also what it means for sustainability. Yesterday we had Enrico Giovannini, who really gave us great insights on whether sustainability is still alive. I do not know to what extent sustainability is still alive, or maybe it's reformulated or will have to be reformulated within this new thinking of economic security and of course the power shifts that we are seeing. Of course, this brings to us a lot of challenges for the Mediterranean region. We are seeing it already. Actually, the first day, Cinzia, we had a session on the economics of degeneration. So and I think we might be moving more into a trend of degeneration in the Mediterranean region. Also, interestingly enough, in Africa, we can see that mounting conflicts and armed, specifically armed conflicts, and we can see also that there has been a number of coups in Africa, and this also means that more disruptions. Hopefully next year you will be in Barcelona. This is hopefully that's what, if we are all in good health. So please, Cinzia, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Rim, for the nice words, for the nice introduction. I also remember our first meeting in Tunis, because I met a former colleague who was with us in Tunis, and we were just remembering the conference. So 10 years have passed, so it's quite a lot, but it's a great pleasure to be here with you today. Rim mentioned, I want to touch upon the very global and macro issues, because I think it's important to understand the shifts and the change in the landscape in which we are living in order to be able to really understand what are the challenges to sustainability and to, I know that you have discussed regenerative economy, reforestation. I think all these themes are extremely important and we cannot abandon them, but really need to know how to rethink, maybe to reshape our approach given that the global landscape is changing in a quite profound way. I have a presentation. I will share my screen. I hope you can see it. I will go on full screen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, yes. Just put it on the presentation view, so it's clear.
Because sorry,
F5.
F5.
Yes.
Does it work? Did it
Yes.
work?
Huh?
Can you see now? Sorry,
we could go to setting on the top and swap screen.
Wait, because
display setting.
Display settings.
Yes. Swap screen. Swap presenter. Exactly. Perfect.
Can you now you can see it properly, right?
Yeah, all good. Yes, you can start.
Okay, thank you. So as I said, my first point is really trying to identify what are the main elements which define the big changes that we are living in. And I think that there are major geopolitical changes which are related to conflicts. Rim, you mentioned that there is a growing number of armed conflicts in the world. I mean, of course, there is a lot of attention on Ukraine, a lot of attention on Gaza, but actually that there are many different areas, especially in Africa, where conflicts are expanding. And we have this situation whereby the US has been retreating from a global leadership, but President Trump pretends to shape global politics and the global scene by big statements. At the same time, we are seeing signs of potentially new alliances emerging. I'm sure many of you have seen all these pictures and images of Xi Jinping hosting the leaders of the BRICS, but also of other countries in China, and many hands shaking, suggesting that there may be repositioning and new equilibria shaping. At the same time, Europe seems a bit lost in all this change with an uncertain role. So I'll try to take really a global view, but in a few cases I will focus on the challenges specific for Europe and what it means for global coordination. When it comes to the economics, we are also seeing a lot of changes, but maybe one notable one and very relevant is the increasing role of what is called geoeconomics. And basically, what we have seen in recent years, and especially in 2025, I mean, I heard many people speaking about 2025 as the year of weaponization, basically where all economic linkages have been either weaponized or considered to be weaponized. And this is really the core of geoeconomics. It's really this resort to economic linkages or leverage on economic linkages to achieve geopolitical or political objectives, or on the other side, to use political or geopolitical linkages to gain economic advantage. And we have seen President Trump actually doing great use of all these linkages, as I mean, not least with Europe. Now, as I mentioned, 2025 was somehow a watershed year, but the reality is that things had started to change already some time ago. And if you look at the big global economies, if you look at China, the United States, and even India, this idea of reducing external reliances and at the same time affirm the economic domestic interest on a global stage, leveraging on their economic power, has actually been going on for about a decade. In 2015, China announced the dual circulation strategy, which led to Made in China 2025, whereby the new economic strategy actually foresaw development and expansion of the domestic economy, and at the same time reduction in reliance on the external economies, especially the United States, while building strengths and supplying the world in a way that actually other countries could become dependent on China. So if you think of the crucial role that China plays today in relation to raw materials, this is of course related to some natural resources, but a lot is due to processing of natural resources where actually China has control of the global market almost total. So this didn't come by chance. So it is something that it was part of a policy. Even America First and MAGA, that is now taking all the headlines, in practice was already introduced by Trump during his first administration, so 2016, almost 10 years ago. And even China, which is much less developed compared to the United States and China, had put forward this Make in India in 2014. So all the large economies really try to put in place long-term strategies to affirm the power, to become more assertive, but also to reduce reliance on the external world. The exception to this somehow has been the European Union, which has remained faithful to openness and free markets. And it's basically only now that there were some signs of change already a couple of years ago, but this has really changed since the new Trump administration, and this idea of economic security and strategic autonomy have become really a priority. And in the language and the EU language, very often economic security and strategic autonomy have become interchangeable. In reality, they are quite different concepts, but it's clear that economic security, or at least a certain degree of economic security, is precondition for strategic autonomy. So the only way you can actually put in place your own choices relies crucially on the ability to have some economic security. If you are fully vulnerable on the economic side, it's clear that you will not be able to take your own decisions. In practice, it's true that there are elements that are part of both. So, for instance, when it comes to de-risking, when it comes to promoting external partnerships, diversification, basically all these approaches in the end are ways to secure both economic security and strategic autonomy. Now, what are the changes that basically this different economic landscape is producing? And I think the main change that this shifts, basically the return of power politics and this idea of economic security is producing is that two pillars which have worked as the foundation, if you want, of globalization, but also the economic growth of many countries, are basically shaking. And the first one is the rule-based system. So the idea that basically we have principles, that everyone respects the same principles, and this allows us to do trade on a level playing field. so that basically we have certainty and reciprocity. And this is basically almost over. It is over as a global principle. Maybe countries are trying to make sure that these principles still remain among them, but it's clear that it's not certain that the United States, no China, will behave respecting the principle of certainty and reciprocity. And possibly other countries, of course. But the two big players have certainly shown that they're ready to deviate. And the second pillar is the market-driven economy, and fundamentally the idea that efficiency drives the allocation of resources. So basically that you are free to operate across the globe, basically on the same level playing field, just choosing the best place according to economic principles. We are really moving away from this situation, and where considerations mostly related to securities become more important. And among economists, basically there was the expectation that this would lead to immediate disruptions. And in particular, for instance, in the case of the United States, the introduction of tariffs would lead quite quickly to inflations, reduced credibility, inefficiency, and this would translate on trade disruptions and broader disruptions on the global economy. Now, the reality is that all this didn't really materialize. So the US economy, well, if we look at the aggregate indicators, is doing quite well. The performance of the stock market is actually quite stunning. And the resilience until now of the global economy is quite impressive. So there is some questions, and actually many politicians are even challenging economists, saying, you guys, you are not getting right. And this is basically, it's really posing the question of whether power politics is trumping economics, or whether we, as I try to put in this small image, is like we are looking at the same things, but we are seeing we are giving two different interpretations. We have two different readings. But this also makes me think of a quite famous, known sentence by Don Bush. Some of you may recall it, which says, in economics, things take longer to happen than you think they will, and then they happen faster than you thought they could. So we really need to be very careful in belief on our dear politicians. And I think that one of the issues we may see is that in fact things go very fast, they change very fast, but I think that the real economy still takes some time. So we really need to be very careful in distinguishing the very short term from the longer term. And here there may be a divide of views, more optimistic in the short term, less optimistic in the long term. And in particular, there is this dominant short-term view, and especially coming from the United States, whereby well, okay, we have the tariffs, but it's not that bad. Both the US and the global economy can stand tariffs. AI is doing great. We will have huge productivity growth, especially in the United States. GDP is doing very well, and that there is no serious concern about the US debt. The less optimistic view is that there may be some time lag, and there has been some anticipatory behavior which may have smoothened the short-term impact of big changes like introduction of large tariffs. And also the fact that, and this is something I'm hearing a lot from investors, is that the uncertainty is extremely high and everyone is reluctant to make big changes today, because there is still a sense that we may go back on certain policy choices. The famous taco that has been applied a lot to Trump. At the same time, institutional disruptions and changes may take quite a long time to show their effects. There may still be some effect to come, but it takes time. But there we need to be very careful, because when institutional change happens, then it takes really it's really difficult to go back. And the second a big change, which is really related to US policies, it relates to the fact that the US is playing a central role in the global financial system, both the US and US-based financial institutions, as well as the dollar. And while there is quite a lot of concern, not much is happening yet, or has happened yet, because there is no real alternative to the dollar. So it's not easy to switch to other things. But it's quite certain that technology and technological changes is going to play a big role in reshaping the future international monetary order. Let's hope that there is order. And at the same time that trust around the US is eroding, and there is no alternative yet, other actors are really trying to fill the vacuum. And we can actually see multiple initiatives, especially in Asia, around China. And these initiatives are going to change the global monetary system. So here, really the message that I want to convey is that really need to be quite cautious and saying, well, there are quite a big changes, but the system is very resilient and we are not seeing much impacts. I think it's true in the short term. I think we really need to be more cautious in assessing what the longer term changes could be. And one reason for this and more profound changes is that behind the changes in the US policies, one big driver is the US-China power competition. And the fact that China is really seen as a global rival by the United States. And one big sign of rivalry, if you want, can be recognized in the fact that China is basically the only country which refused to negotiate with Trump. We saw that after the tariffs, all the head of states tried to meet Trump. The only one who refused was actually Xi Jinping. And in the end, Trump was forced to call and to negotiate. And there, I think that there is a combination of global and domestic factors which define the attitude both in the United States and in China. And in the United States, of course, there is a great concern about Chinese imports from China. I mean, we are speaking about amounts close to $500 billion a year. These are huge amounts. But there is also a domestic politics component because while, of course, Trump has been the anti-China guy, in fact, the narrative of China being US enemies is widely shared in the US Congress and bipartisan also among the Republicans. So politically is quite an easy game to play in the domestic policies. But ultimately, it's really the fact that China in this push for technological change and its attempt to take technological leadership is really perceived as a competitor for global influence. On the other side, I think China adds the ability to escalate the trade war because it's self-conscious of its systemic importance in value chains in terms of penetrations. I mean, China is basically involved in most of the global value chains, all of them. It's not a sectoral, doesn't depend on the level of technology. It's really extremely widespread. And then it plays a key role in raw materials. So this gives China leverage, and it has been using it. So we have seen this. The second reason, I think, is that because there is a lot of awareness on the fact that while Trump wants to cut its trade deficits when it comes to goods, US reliance on Chinese goods is just very high, and it's impossible to cut because there is no substitution. And this idea that reindustrialization easily is actually something that is quite unrealistic and something on which China is playing. So the reality of all this, or the consequence of all this, is that there is a lot of uncertainty and things looks quite unpredictable. But it's clear that rivalry is very likely to intensify and not going away. Now, as I said, I'm really looking at this also from a European perspective and what this could mean for global order, global cooperation. And I have to say that these recent changes have been extremely important and quite dramatic from the point of view of Europe. Which in the end finds itself facing a dual challenge. So it's not that the rivalry between the US and China puts us in a better position. It actually puts Europe in a quite weak position. And one fundamental reason for this is that Europe is an extremely open economy. It's much more open than China and the United States. And it is highly interdependent both on China and the US. On China for trade value chain, so China is key for our imports and for production, while the United States is more important as an export market. And the EU is very dependent on the United States on two areas, finance and technology. So there is basically almost blind reliance on US-centered monetary and financial system. And we depend very much on the US on foreign direct investment. So foreign direct investment is not something only for less developed economies. It's extremely important actually for Europe and is a key source of innovation and export potential. And then, of course, we rely on the US big tech for technology services. This really, this rivalry and this power politics really puts us in a quite weak position because basically Europe is not a military power. The power of Europe over the last decades have really built on economic relations and capacity to set standards, certain not traditional power, so no power in a traditional sense. And in fact, one of the main recent challenges has been the fact that Europe depends on the United States almost completely when it comes to security through the UN. And this dependence and the less reliability on the United States has been a source of major vulnerability and something that has really limited Europe's ability to make its own choices. Look at what happened with trade. Another thing that it's a source of concern, but also a reflection about the way forward is that the US and the EU economy have been traditionally very aligned, and now we are seeing diverging patterns. I would say at least on three different levels. Some short-term asymmetries, so the way the two economies are developing on the short terms. This may be the least relevant in a structural sense, but still important. The US economy seems like buoyant. If you look at the equity markets, the EU looks weak, but still a stable outlook, with some fast changes in exchange rate, so in relative prices, which probably are just a sign of high uncertainty. But more fundamentally, I see divergence on two other levels. One is really on the structure of the economy, where we see in the US very high productivity, while productivity has been much lower in the European Union. But at the same time, if we look at the broader level of indicators, we are also seeing that social indicators in the United States have been deteriorating at impressive speed and actually moving very far away from other advanced economies. If you look at life expectancy and other indicators, the US actually is doing extremely poor, while actually the EU has been improving a lot. And the last level is really the policy orientation. So the US has switched towards protectionism, sector-specific deregulation to benefit, for instance, the big tech, more ad hoc state intervention, buying equities in big companies. At the contrary, the US remains still committed to open trade, regulatory stability, multilateralism. So really a divergence in this sense, which poses dilemmas for the EU in its relation with the United States, but also the attitude vis-à-vis multilateral organizations and global cooperation. Now, let me come to a few challenges and then specific challenges for the EU, but which I think are relevant also for sustainability, for the sustainability discussion. Now, I think for the EU that there are, if you want, two sets of challenges. So the first thing is really the fact that when it comes to economic relations, I think it's quite important to distinguish what is purely trade and what is financial or technology kind of economic relations. And I think when it comes to trade, the key actor and the key issue for the EU is not the United States, it's actually China. And the reason for this is, despite all the attentions that the US tariff have attracted, this is more a distraction than a fundamental issue. And the reason for this is, I think it's twofold. The first is that basically, even though the US have imposed tariffs, only China and Canada have reacted. The rest of the world has not imposed tariffs. So I think that there is still a large part of the world where there is an interest actually in trading and to have common rules. The second thing is that at least in the EU, maybe we should also look at other countries, the impact of tariffs on EU exports has been much lower than what we expected. So we really need to see what is going to happen in the next months, but it has been limited because in the end there has been a lot of negotiation, a lot of exceptions, and effective rates much lower than the big percentages that have been put on the forward by Trump. I think that the real issue for the EU is really China. And there are two reasons. One is because, as I said, there are a lot of interdependencies. And the two other crucial aspects is that the fact that the Chinese government has been so present in the economy, so through subsidies and policies which basically make Chinese companies operating on a different playing field than the European companies is becoming a real issue. And there is a major concern about the fact that oversupply is pushing down prices at the global level. And in the EU, there is a lot of push for actually having the European Commissions and European governments more proactive to protect European economies. And this actually may be a bad news for the rest of the world as well. The second thing, which I think is quite important, is that given this situation in which the multilateral system is really under stress because two big players are actually moving away from this framework, what we are seeing is an increased number of bilateral agreements. And the EU is really trying to sign agreements with many other countries. You may have heard about agreements with Mercosur, with India. So there is really a question about whether instead of the WTO we are seeing a large number of bilateral agreements, and whether this is going to be successful. Certainly less efficient, but probably seen as the way forward for many countries. I'm going to speed up because I'm running out of time, so I'll try to move to the part which I think is most relevant. Now, I think all these changes and challenges, I think, pose some questions, but also some opportunities. And there is a lot of questions about where to invest. And I think this is quite fundamental. And there is a lot of attention which is given to technology. There is this sort of equation in the mind of many people. You lead in technology, you have economic and geopolitical power. So there is really this need to invest in technology. I think this is something that is important, especially if you depend very much on a partner that is not very reliable anymore. But I actually believe that the big opportunity for Europe could be represented by climate. Here, under the umbrella climate, I try to incorporate anything that actually is related to the green transition. And the reason for this is that the EU is still a global reference when it comes to fighting climate change. And this despite the fact that there are a lot of internal division. You may have heard about all the debate about sustainability reporting and the watering down of sustainability reporting, and the fact that the US opposition to climate policy is moving, is changing Europe's direction. I think actually this is a mistake. Because and this is, I got really this impression by speaking to investors. Investors are still interested in places where fighting climate change is taken seriously. But what is necessary is that the EU gives certainty. I think that the most painful approach, or the most wrong approach that actually you can follow is really to increase uncertainty and not saying anymore or clearly which direction you are going. And the second thing is that I really believe is a necessity. If we look at the occurrence of extreme events, and at the same time the dependency that Europe has on fossil fuel. So this is actually a message that I'm trying to repeat quite often, because I think it's quite important. So all your initiatives, I think, are extremely valuable. Now, my last part is really on global cooperation. And here it is quite clear that we are really transitioning from a system which was US centered, so a multipolar world defined by multilateral organization towards one which is more multipolar but less multilateral. And this is, I think, is quite a dramatic change, which is going to reduce trust in the global system, with a trigger coming from the inside. And this, I think, has two major consequences. One, which I mentioned already at the beginning, is that the fact that the economic decisions cannot be taken anymore under the assumptions of the full mobility of people, goods, services, capital, and resources. And basically, security concerns become part of the decision-making process. And the second consequence is that we are likely to see the emergence of blocks, geographical blocks, and potentially rival blocks. I'll explain this in a moment. But this basically means that we are going to see major challenges to the global governance, because we have a strong nationalism push in many countries, large countries, but also many small countries. So this is a more generalized trend where basically everyone tries to defend its own interest, and there is much less propensity to cooperate for the global good. The second challenge is because of a weaker multilateralism, with multilateral institutions in great difficulties, from the UN to the WTO, the WHO, and economic integration that becomes more selective. So globalization doesn't go away, but it is largely reconfigured. And in all these changes, my guess is that actually we will see an increased power of multinationals. So very big corporations, especially in the tech sector, but in fact multinational are actually expanding across multiple sectors, which will try to fill the gap left by weaker institutions. And in this sense, size matters. We know that some of these big corporations are larger than countries. You may have seen data about NVIDIA. NVIDIA has exactly the same capitalization, which is equivalent to the German GDP. So we are really talking about huge corporations which control AI, and this can contribute actually to influence rules, standards, and market outcomes. So the power of corporations is going to increase and in certain cases become larger than states. And this, I think, leads to some risks. The fact that smaller states are less hurt and they will have less places to... Yes? I'm finishing, Rim. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, finishing last slide. So for populations, it become very difficult to bring their voice, and of course, higher transaction cost. So there will be a lot of time and resources spending in trying to get agreements. And this, I think, brings us to think really of responses and what we can do. So I think we are going to see different institutional arrangements. I talked about bilateral agreements. I think these are going to increase. We will see more coalitions of the willing and regulatory networks. So those who agree actually to respect certain rules, to abide to certain principles, actually coming together. And this may also lead to the emergence of regional blocks, sometimes of variable geometry, but also likely the resurgence of spheres of influence. Thank you very much for listening, and really looking forward to hear your comments.
Thank you very much, Cinzia. That was very comprehensive and also giving stock on what we are seeing today in global politics and global economic trends. But of course, the world, it's not centered on the US and Europe. So this is my first comment. There are other groupings also. Eventually, one needs to look at the global south, whatever this means. I know it's a creation or a construct, but still one needs to look at the view of those countries. Now, my second comment is obviously we are moving. I mean, the reality is we are moving into multipolarity, but then this is not new. We knew this since at least I don't know, perhaps 2010 already we knew about it. Since the financial crisis, even before the financial crisis, we have been looking at signals about the end of the hegemonic, I would say, duopolar type of global, or call it order, global economic order. So China, we've seen we even talked about it when we were at CEPS, that, the 2030, China will be one of the most important economic players together with India. Just looking at the demographic evolutions, not even in terms of the economic, I would say, powers per se, no? So I don't know if any questions from the floor. Otherwise, I have few. Yes, Shahir.
Thank you, Cinzia. Very happy to see you online. Hi. I totally agree with Reem. The presentation was very comprehensive and a bit, how can I say it, discouraging also, in the sense that the amount of uncertainty that we face is really increasing. But I have a question and a comment. If we take into consideration the role of China, especially when it comes to critical minerals and the supply of lithium, nickel, graphite, and all this, not only in terms of extraction, but also in terms of processing. And really, we see to what extent China dominates this market in an almost monopoly way. So bearing this in mind, and bearing also in mind to what extent China is the source of the majority of goods that are important everywhere. Third, the role of China in Africa in dominating different ports, different mines, and so on. So can we say that at the end of the day, the coercion or the balance of power in favor of China is much higher than that of the US and the EU at the same time? And this can represent a leverage for China to impose its vision, its strategy, its policy, whenever we will call it. And to what extent also the EU and the US are ready to accept this, and or they will have to accept this given their comparative disadvantages in all these points. Thank you very much.
Any more questions? Okay. Yes, Antoine.
Right now, we face this situation where China does indeed produce and process most of these materials, but reality is rare earths are not that rare. And there is a lot of them in Europe as well. The issue is we're not willing to do the pollution that it takes to create them. So this is also something else, whether we're willing to pollute a lot and produce those materials ourselves. So that's another.
Cinzia, one last point I wanted to, maybe it's just a comment, is that the new, what we call the geoeconomics, maybe it's not new. We also knew it from the past, so it's not something we didn't know. We always had those elements much more, say, opaque, hidden. So what we are seeing today is simply all surfacing, and we are just giving concept to those what we knew before. I mean, this is we just cannot. We know that politics and economics are very interlinked, and this is simply what we are experiencing nowadays. It's a little bit more focus on certain behaviors, which before they were implicit, and nowadays they are becoming just explicit, because there is no such a global coordination. So in reality, before they were all diffused within these global organizations, or eventually with certain agreements, but nowadays they became much more, visible to the public. So I don't know. I mean, you see, one needs to look at the developments from different perspectives. But all of this, we talked about it years ago. We understand where we're heading. Of course, from the European Union standpoint, there might be a lack of preparedness, because you see, we only learn when the tide it's already extremely close. And we know all of this. I think we have lived several crises, and we just need to leave the next crisis of eventually these rivalries between the players, because each one wants to take the position number 3 or number 4 now. I don't know. I mean, it's what positions they're fighting for, because clearly China and India, which is another major player, they are heading the scene, and we knew it since at least 20 years. So what is your intake about this?
Okay, many thanks. Many thanks for the question. A bit two points. One on China and one on the rest of the world and the global south. Rim, I'm completely with you. Huh? So a lot of, because now a lot of the global games is changing, basically driven by the United States. I mean, de facto, a system which was centered on the United States as the hegemon and supported by multilateral organizations. This is a US creation, huh? Sorry, this is the post World War II global order, which was driven by the United States, and now is challenged from the inside by the United States. So this is a bit the big shift, and basically I think for Europe in this situation, one solution, one way to go is really to open up the eyes and say, okay, there is the United States, there is China, but there is a lot outside there in the rest of the world, and in this I think the global south plays a key role. And Africa especially, because of the geographical vicinity to Europe. So on this, actually, I fully agree with you. Now, on China, 2 points. It is true, Shay, I agree with you. Huh? So this is China has this leverage, and the leverage was built on a strategy and actions, policy and investments, which have going on for more than a decade. And as I mentioned, I think that one of the reasons whereby in the end Trump had to go to the table and to review its tariffs against China is because of the dependencies on the raw materials. And as you said, it's not only about the resources itself, it's because China basically controls the processing of some products 100%, so it's full monopoly. Now, of course, these things are not set in stone, huh? So it's a problem if you do not have access to these materials maybe for today and then the next year. Now, there is a lot of research in technologies that actually use different kind of materials. There is a huge effort in Europe. I mean, I'm speaking to some startups. Basically, I met them occasionally a couple of days ago. Well, where they're thinking whether we can actually produce technologies using different materials on which would reduce our dependencies, and the same is happening in the United States. So these dependencies may change also quite fast. So it's not set in stone. And there was also this comment that actually underground in Europe, we have some of this lithium, for instance, in France. The point is that our regulatory system is such that actually we do not want to take it out, because it's polluting, it's disruptive, and so on and so forth. So quite a few things can change. But it's clear that at the moment, and especially in the short term, China has a strong leverage. But things can change quite quickly. And again, I think it boils down a lot who has control on technology, who has the leadership on technology. And again, on this, it's of course about countries, but also about companies. And and this for me, it's really a pivotal change. It's really the major change that big corporations actually can take and even replace states. Maybe the very last point, Rim, on geoeconomics. It's true. This is really power politics. I use my power to shape politics, to shape how I relate to others. Maybe it's not so new, but it has become quite extreme, and basically something that you do not necessarily do with your allies out of the blue. So, and basically this is what has been doing Trump with the European Union. No? So it's okay, you need to do this and to accept this trade deal, otherwise I withdraw my support on defense, and basically this is a big problem. So is this idea of really instrumentalizing any dependency to achieve your objective, and basically you use this vis-a-vis anyone. And now that there is mapping, many countries in the EU, but also the US, they are doing the mapping of all possible products or substances which could affect our security. And I was in a meeting a few days ago, and the United States basically depends 100% on China for a component of a very basic antibiotic. So basically, China could decide to stop its export to the United States for this substance. It could put at risk the life of many people, really many people. So maybe there is an escalation of paranoia, but there is also an increasing awareness that actually we are very exposed one to each other, and even small products or small substances actually can be used to achieve some political objectives. So, and this is basically, I think it's just killing trust at global level, and really making cooperation much more difficult. So identifying those who you can trust and continue to cooperate may make actually a huge difference.
Thank you very much, Cinzia, and also ending on the erosion of trust. And I think this is essential also for economics and also financial markets. That's key. So I think we will see for sure future disturbances. So it would be nice to have more time to talk to engage a little bit more on sustainability and where we go post SDGs and role of SDGs and so on. But we don't have enough time, Cinzia, so thank you very much. There's a lot for us to think, and eventually we can have another meeting mainly focused on this within the EMANES network. But thank you very much for your time, and I hope we see you soon face to face. So
thank you. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.